Everyone, we're going to wait a couple minutes for more people to sign on. We don't have too many people signed on just yet, so we'll probably start around maybe 5 after or so. For signing on, we're waiting for people to join up here, so we'll probably start about 5 after, okay? We're going to start in a couple minutes. We're just waiting for more people to join on. Thanks for joining. We're going to start in a couple minutes. We're waiting for some more people to join on the webinar. If you guys can hear me, if you can either raise your hand or type something in the chat window, that would help us out a lot. Thanks. Thanks for joining up. We're going to start a couple minutes here. Just want to double check the sound, so if you can hear me, please enter something into the chat window or raise your hand, just make some sort of indication. Thanks a lot. joining. We're going to start in a couple minutes, probably 2 minutes or so. We're just waiting for some more people to join on. Thanks. Joining us. We're going to start in a couple minutes, probably about 1 minute or so, for some more people to join up. All right, everybody, we're going to get going here. Welcome to our third ITJD NEG webinar. I'd thank everyone for tagging along. I know some of you were on the Burning Glass Sandbox webinar 2 days ago, so we appreciate you guys showing up for another webinar so soon afterward. Hopefully we won't have the technical issues like that call did, so, you know, everyone cross fingers. So the webinar we've done, we're going to get most of the intro to ourselves and CompTIA that we've been doing. If you missed the first 2 webinars and you want to know more about Nicole and I or CompTIA and DCO's partnership or the GNEG project in general, you can reach out to us anytime or view archived webinars on Illinois workNet. I'll give you guys the link. It's in this presentation, and then we'll send it out in the email that we send out after this as well. There will be a link to these at the end of this PowerPoint, so you can see that in there, and then we'll email it out to you. Our chat box open here as well, so if you have any questions, please type away. Remember to send your questions to everyone on the drop-down box. I should do that. I'm a bit of a resume geek, so I might start speaking really fast because I want to include a lot of stuff in this small amount of time that we have here. But if you need me to slow down or anything, please let me know through the chat box. Today, I'm going to be spending some time talking about IT resumes and applicant tracking systems, and then I'll hand it over to Nicole so she can talk about transferable skills and IT keywords. The goal here is to give you guys as much information as possible to make it easier to help your IT clients get jobs. A picture like this in job search presentations, what you're looking at here is, well, it's either a picture of a rabbit or it's a picture of a duck based on the way you're interpreting the image. What would be the ears of the rabbit are also the bill of the duck, if that helps you guys out. I like showing interpretive images like this just to hammer home the idea that there isn't just one correct way to write a resume or conduct an interview or whatever it is. Another more recent example of a picture like this is that dress from a few weeks ago that was obviously blue and black, right? The idea is that personal perceptions play a really big role in the job search, and 100 different resume experts are going to tell people 100 different things, which makes it difficult for a job seeker. For job seekers to get confused when they're given conflicting advice. So as workforce professionals, it's a good idea for us to keep that in mind. And I'm going to be talking about an IT resume format that I've seen work for a lot of clients. Tons of my previous IT clients get jobs by using a format like the one that we'll go over, but it's not going to be for everyone. You obviously know your clients better than I do, so if something in this webinar resonates with you, by all means use it, but I don't want it to seem like I'm telling you to change every one of your clients' resumes to this exact format or something. All right, everyone's favorite topic, applicant tracking systems, right? No resume discussion is complete without mentioning these. Those of you who don't know what an ATS is, if you've ever applied for a job and you get redirected to a site that says something like Taleo or iSIMS or PeopleSoft or something, copy and paste parts of your resume into boxes and fill out sections one by one. Those are applicant tracking systems. They're a pain. They take about an hour or so to do, so a lot of job seekers really hate doing them, understandably so. They're really built to help HR departments sift through all the resumes that were submitted for specific keywords. That match enough keywords will make it through the screening process, and the other resumes will get rejected. The ones through the screening process get reformatted so that when an HR person looks at all the resumes, they're all in the exact same format. Applicant tracking systems have a lot of flaws. Clients need to know how to get past them in order to stand any chance at getting a job. And ATS becomes especially important due to HR's reliance on bringing in applicants with a large variety of certifications and technical proficiencies. What this does is it makes the pool of keywords to choose from even bigger than normal. The application process is that much difficult for the client. Beat and ATS, obviously keywords are the big thing here. If your client isn't matching the keywords from the job lead, they really stand no chance at getting their resume seen by the employer. Nicole is going to talk more about keywords a little later on, but what this boils down to is just customizing your resume for every single job lead. Clients have to know that they have to do that. If they don't know that they have to do that, they're probably getting screened out by these applicant tracking systems. Things like fancy lines, graphics, tables, and images can potentially trip up particularly older applicant tracking software. So clients are wary of using those. I guess unless they're applying for graphic designer positions or something like that. For example, I saw a client once who had a picture of his face that up the whole page, and the words of his resume were written on this gigantic picture of his head, right? That's a great example of what not to do when you're applying for an applicant tracking system, because the system doesn't understand what it's being given. I want to stress the word might be able to get away with writing a longer resume if they know that they're submitting to an ATS. This way they have a better chance of fitting in all the keywords into that longer resume. But the thing to keep in mind is that a lot of clients take this too far, and they, 8-page resumes that are spammed with keywords. ATSs, your clients should make sure that they're calling their work experience instead of calling it something like career history, I see sometimes, or employment history. The reason why is that older ATSs are scanning the resume for the phrase work experience, and if it doesn't find that, it'll totally mess up the format of the resume for the HR person who has to read it. Most modern ATSs don't have this problem, so you don't really have to worry about it with something like Taleo, but the older applicant tracking systems will have that issue. So, touchy tip where it says know someone. What I mean by know someone is networking is still the most reliable way to get a resume past an applicant tracking system. If a client knows someone at a company that they're applying to, they should speak to that person before applying online to see if there's a shortcut to getting their resume to a hiring manager. This particularly works well at a lot of small or mid-sized companies. A lot of larger companies, they're still going to have to submit their resume to the applicant tracking system to get it seen. The big red flag that you want to listen for with this ATS thing, if a client also mentions their frustration with not hearing anything back from a job application that they qualify for, the problem is most likely an applicant tracking system issue. They'd probably benefit from a resume overhaul with these tips in mind. Here we have our IT resume template. I know it's pretty small on this page, so I'd recommend downloading it to follow along. I was actually going to add it to this presentation, but it didn't work so well, so I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do it. Let me share my screen. So you guys should be seeing the Illinois WorkNet website. To get to this website, it's just www.illinoisworknet.com/jobdriven-NEG. And it'll go right to this page. If you scroll down a little bit, you can go to this section that says Resume Development. You click on Development. Right in the top section here, it says Download the Template. If you need to repeat that or anything like that, just go ahead and type it in the chat window. I'd be happy to do that. All right. Just a little background on the template that we have here. If you look online, resumes, a lot of the more reputable sites like something like Business Insider have templates that are very, very similar to this. They're almost identical. As a lot of the local vocational schools, places like Microtrain have similar resume templates. Career centers like Illinois WorkNet, Jim Fergal does a really great job. He has a template that's very similar to this. So it's not anything that's totally groundbreaking or earth-shattering. It's just a really reliable, modern resume template for IT candidates. There was some input from Matt Weiss at National Label as well. So as always, thanks to Matt for helping us out. Is how are IT resumes different than other resumes? IT resumes are more focused on keywords just due to the nature of IT, what with all the certifications and acronyms. Most normal resume templates don't have enough room on the page dedicated to keywords and acronyms and skills just because they don't need it as much. And you need a lot of room for that stuff. So a good IT resume template is going to have enough room basically for all those necessities without being, 25 pages long, right? The overall layout of this template and go into the sections of the template one by one. Speaking, the first page of a resume is the most important, right? That all the time. The client shouldn't hide what I call their greatest hits on their second or third page of the resume. So if they're running the risk that greatest hit won't be seen by the employer who's reading their resume. Out there that says recruiters and HR representatives only look at a resume for an average of 6 seconds each. And if that's true, then its best assets need to be front and center. First page. References or saying references available upon request, it's unnecessary in newer resumes. It's just style and it's a little redundant. The reader knows that the job seeker has references available upon request, right? So it doesn't need to be on the resume. They'd be better off using that resume real estate for something more important. When he does ask for references, they should be on a separate page. I already mentioned this, but fancy lines, graphics, tables might hurt a client's chances at getting the job, as mentioned previously. Recruiters and hiring managers I talk to vastly prefer chronological resumes rather than functional ones. Functional resumes became a red flag when so many people tried to use them to cover up employment gaps after the financial crisis. So usually a functional resume will get the resume bin by the IT recruiter or the HR rep. Customize the resume for every job they applied for. I know I mentioned that, but it bears repeating. With the template that we have here, it's a lot easier to customize so they don't have to rewrite their resume every time they apply somewhere. I'll go into that more detail in a little bit. There aren't really dense blocks of text anywhere on this template. Most bullet points are only a line or two long, and there aren't any super long paragraphs or anything like that. This goes back to that statistic about 6 seconds for every resume. And if you're assuming that's true, a resume reader will definitely skip a bullet that's, 8 lines long. And you see that a lot with particularly upper-level IT people who have been in the field for 30 years or so. They're going to have those bigger, dense text on there. Lastly, on this slide, a lot of clients have some inconsistencies in their resume, particularly with font sizing and bullet layouts, dates, which are sometimes written in different ways on one resume, and periods. Sometimes a client will put a period at the end of a bullet, and sometimes they won't. Neither is incorrect in a resume, but we just want to make sure that they're consistent throughout the whole resume. Length. This question is always a nightmare because it's riddled with subjectivity. I'm sure you guys get this question all the time. The IT recruiters that I talked to mostly said that the longest a resume should be is about 3 pages. And that's from who's like, executive level with 40 years of experience or something. I think a good rule of thumb, a basic rule of thumb for resume length is to add 1 page for every 10 years of experience. 10 years, you got 1 page. 10 to 20 years, you got 2 pages. 20 and beyond, maybe 3 pages. Now, having said that, resumes really shouldn't go back much farther than 10 or 15 years, particularly on IT. Most IT recruiters will skip anything more than 10 or 15 years back just due to perceived irrelevance. If your client has Corel Draw and WordPerfect on their resume, that's not really going to do them any favors, right? could be something like your client worked at Apple or Microsoft 20 years ago. Well, they'd be themselves a disservice if they took those companies off their resume just because it happened 15 years ago. They're good companies to have on your resume if you're an IT employee or an IT candidate. Info, so down a little bit. First obvious section on any resume is the contact info. Right off the bat, the client's email should be professional. I'm sure you guys know that. And I'm sure you guys all have some crazy stories about crazy email addresses that your clients have had. I've certainly had some that I wouldn't be comfortable saying aloud on this webinar. A reliable format that they can use, firstname.lastname@gmail.com. I would just say that domains like Hotmail and AOL are outdated and are a small red flag. If a client wants to be technically relevant, should stick with something like Gmail or something equally modern to Gmail. I think 1996 quite like an AOL email address, right? It needs to make sure that their voicemail message is professional for whatever number they have on their resume, and I'm sure we all have stories about that too. I had one that was pretending to be Captain America, and he started singing a song, and it was a complete nightmare, and he had to change it as soon as possible. So that would be a good example of what not to do on your voicemail. What you'll notice about this template is that there's no spot for an address. Addresses really aren't necessarily required anymore. In some cases, it can even hurt the client's chances that they put their address on the resume because the hiring manager might screen them out if they're too far away. I know in the world of workforce development, this is a bit of a controversial idea, so you'll have to use your best judgment. But if you think about it, it makes sense. Aren't going to send snail mail, and we live in a much more connected world than we did even 10 years ago. I'd say if a client lives very close to the employer, maybe 5 or 10 miles or so, having their address on the resume is fine. Otherwise, it might be smarter for them to remove it. But like I said, use your best judgment. Some people, they like to only put the city and the state that they live in on their resume, and I think that's fine too. The idea, I would say it's actually a necessity for a client to include their customized LinkedIn URL in the contact information at the top of their screen. Template to the professional title. A lot of resumes nowadays have the applicant's professional title centered under the contact info. If the client's last role was, say, a help desk technician, they can write help desk professional or something similar to that on the top of their resume. The reason is, again, seconds each. So it's important that the reader understands exactly what kind of professional the client is as soon as humanly possible. And a title to a resume, it definitely helps the reader with that. Summary section is one thing my clients would struggle with on their resume. It was this section. The most common mistake they would make was writing an objective statement rather than a summary. You absolutely do not want to have any objective statements, right? An objective statement would be, one of those, I'm interested in a challenging position where I can grow as a professional, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that after the financial crisis, companies became very uninterested in what job seekers want. They're much interested in how the job seeker can help their company, and summary statements are the best way to get that across. Should a summary be? Summary shouldn't be very long. Like I said before, we don't want any big blocks of text, right? So 2 to 3 lines of information should do the trick. If it's much longer than that, the client can break it into bullet points like we have here in our template. I think that's a good solution. Again, the summary bullets aren't a necessity. It's just a good solution if your client has a long summary. Remember, it's prime real estate on a resume, and a client might bore a potential employer by having some long-winded summary that's 10 lines long. Right? They only have that half a page to grab the reader's attention, so they want to keep it short and sweet. Even need a summary is a question that I get a lot. I would say not necessarily. I think it's a good idea the client to quickly summarize his or her experience and abilities, especially as they relate to the particular position they're applying for. But I've seen great resumes that got IT clients hired that didn't include a summary. So it's an absolute requirement. I still encourage people to write them, though. I think it's a good thing to have on there. Particularly a well-written summary is something that is a necessity, I think. The skills and abilities section. This section is a quick list of keywords used to help get a client resume past applicant tracking systems. That's really all it is. Having a section for skills and keywords on a resume makes the resume really easy to customize. client finds whatever keywords they have from the job lead, and they come right into this section. They don't need to rewrite their resume every single time that they apply somewhere. The thing I'll add about the keyword section is that this should not be set up as a table in Microsoft Word. Tables can cause issues with applicant tracking systems, right? So it's better to just use the tab button to get everything to line up. But again, it's going to talk more about keywords in a little bit to help you with this section. So, all right, similar to the skills section, we have the technical proficiencies or technical skills section underneath that. Examples that you might find on this are, Microsoft Word 2013, Windows Server 2008, CATIA A+, Net+, C++, things like that. Pretty unique to the IT resume. It's just an additional section for IT-specific keywords and for recent certifications. If you guys have a lot of people getting recent certifications, you're going to want to have them put it in this section here. Modern resumes often have a short description of the company underneath the company's name. We're talking about the work experience section here. This should really be no longer than 1 line long, 2 maximum. If it's a large, well-known company like, something like AT&T, then no need for a description because everybody knows what AT&T is, right? But if it's a smaller, mid-sized company, hiring managers will like a quick recap of the company in order to get an idea of who they work for. Title with a couple lines underneath explaining daily, weekly, and monthly job duties. And underneath that, there are the accomplishments or key contributions the client did to go above and beyond what was called them, right? And a lot of IT recruiters talk about how important it is to have those key accomplishments on a resume. You'll notice that we broke job duties and accomplishments up because one thing that the IT recruiters mention is that so many people are leaving off job duties and only writing their accomplishments, which makes it tough to figure out what the person actually did on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So to fix this, a lot of newer resume templates have a section for job duties and accomplishments, and they're clearly labeled so that neither part gets neglected. In this particular template, the job duty section is written as a short paragraph, but other templates will write them as bullets. I think both methods are fine. General rule about bullets, there really shouldn't be any less than 3 bullets per section and no more than 7. If the client has something like 15 or 20 bullets in a section, they cut that down because no one's going to go through 20 bullets and read each one individually for that 6 seconds rule. There's the education section. I'll say 3 quick things. If a client's degree is recent, say from the last 5 years or so, experience section can be moved higher on the resume, maybe above the work experience or above the skills and abilities. If the client's degree is from 10 plus years ago, that date can be removed, and the education section should remain at the bottom of the resume. It's a good idea to put recent certifications at the bottom on education in addition to the certification section above, just in case, because you never know where the reader's going to look. Two other quick things here to note before we move on to Nicole. I'm going to talk about proofreading a little bit. You guys all know about this, but many clients forget to proofread, which gets them into trouble. I literally had someone put the F word on their resume as an accident, which was obviously a bad idea, and that went through because they got to proofread, right? Any recruiter or HR representative is going to tell you that just one mistake on a resume can nix a client's chances at getting a job. Clients need to be reminded to proofread each resume that they create, right? Because we're creating customized resumes for every single job lead that we apply to. Sometimes they don't want to proofread every single resume that they create for those different job leads. Get a second set of eyes view these resumes as well, and this is where you guys would come in handy. Hopefully the clients are coming to you asking you to proofread their resumes as well. One proofreading method that I like is to read each sentence on the resume backwards. I know that sounds a little silly, but this forces the brain to assess each word individually, and it hones in on all the spelling errors that you might have in the resume. Sometimes clients get really frustrated with their job search, which is, understandable, but a few of them might feel the need to lie or bend the truth beyond credibility on their resume. Lying on a resume backfires more often than not, so if you're feeling that a client might be fibbing a bit, you might need to address that with them. I want to mention a few things not to do. there's this persistent rumor out there that goes a little like this. It's the seeker pastes the job lead with a bunch of keywords to the bottom of their resume in small white font. The idea is it'll fool an applicant tracking system into passing the resume along to HR. I call it the white font keyword trick, and it absolutely does not work. It worked in the early days of applicant tracking systems, but nowadays it will actually hurt a client's chances at getting that job because the applicant tracking system will recognize they're trying to kind of scam the system a little bit. The last thing I'll mention is about file formats. DOC, .docx, and RTF are probably the safest. PDFs can be used if the site says that it's okay. What we don't want is zip files or JPEGs or TIFF files or GIF files, however that's pronounced. Anything like that. I'm going to hand things over to Nicole, who's going to talk about keywords and transferable skills. Give me a send the ball over to her.
Good morning, everybody. As most of you probably already know, in today's job market, many companies are looking for someone with enough skill and ability to hit the ground running. I know we've been saying this for a long time, especially seeing the economy crash and start to build back up. This is definitely true. It means that the job seeker has to really show an employer that they've done similar work either in their previous position, in school, or both. However, this doesn't mean that only those who worked in IT-titled positions are able to get the job. And this is especially true for those taking their first step into the IT field, since many of us today are technically savvy from the everyday usage of our personal computers, phones, game systems, and televisions. There are also many people gaining skills in customer service positions that can be easy stepping stones into the IT field. Is to identify those similar skills and sell them, no matter how they were obtained, to show that the employer that the customer has what they're looking for. So how do we determine what a transferable skills it is so that we can highlight it on the resume, a LinkedIn page, and during the interview? Today I'm going to talk about ways to identify transferable skills so they can be utilized at their maximum potential. The customer's resume in order to pick out the key IT skills they've already identified. If the customer is coming from an experienced position, they will hopefully have already clearly identified those skills and descriptions that relate to their previous IT roles. These would be IT-specific language, acronyms, customer service skills, and time management skills, just to mention a few. If the customer is transitioning from another field, they may not have specific IT roles and experiences that stand out. However, job-specific details can still transition to transferable skills that would be similar in future IT roles. Skills like customer service, data entry, and time management are highly desired in entry-level roles. They may also view computer-related hardware and software on a daily basis, like printers, copiers, point-of-sale systems, and Microsoft Office products. These skills can easily be transitioned into a first-tier role like IT customer support if identified properly on the resume and during the interview. If the customer does not have a well-developed resume, key details about their previous experience may be missing. Asking a series of questions could draw out some of those IT-related skills. Those would be similar to these. I listed a number of questions here that I came up with, just things that kind of helped me draw IT-related skills out from customers that I had worked with. For a customer with experience, a question such as describe the software and hardware you used on a daily basis would help them talk about those related skills, write them down, and make sure that those show on their resume. A customer with no previous experience in IT, simple questions like how did you access the internet at home? How do you currently use a home PC, tablet, or smartphone? Did you set up that network? What type of internet service do you use? How do you connect to the internet? Have you ever had an issue with your home computer, internet access, and how did you resolve that issue? Questions like these, very simple, might get them to start using IT terminology and identify tools that they've already used but didn't realize. These could be transferable skills that should be highlighted on their resume, possibly under volunteer work if they did it for family members. The answers to these questions, if related directly to the IT position the customer is seeking, should be sure to be portrayed on the resume, which leads us into the next step. The type of work a customer is seeking in the IT field is very important. This can transition to a new career where they're targeting entry-level first-tier roles or seeking a higher position using their previous IT experience. If they haven't already identified career titles they're seeking, utilizing the CompTIA IT certifications roadmap can help a customer locate a targeted career path and related certification titles associated with that path. These career path and certification titles can then be plugged into a job search portal to produce key open IT positions, which can be used to identify transferable skills necessary for that type of position. Related positions from a specific job search engine into those current jobs to help determine what an employer is seeking versus what the customer would bring to the table. As these positions are reviewed, it might be helpful to highlight those details that have been previously identified during the review of the customer's resume. Click First Job Lead, and here's what the lead required. Reviewing the job lead for transferable skills, note how an employer is describing the role using the current terminology, which could give insight to changes that might need to occur on the customer's resume, ensure the marketing themselves using the current language of the position. Just like asking follow-up questions to draw more detail about previous experience, reviewing the job lead may also identify skills that they were previously using but not incorporated into their resume. These additional skills may be essential transferable skills that need to be included. Another important use for the review of targeted job leads is to also help edit out the customer's non-related skills so that they leave more room to highlight the important ones. Target transferable skills would be to use ONET Online. Some of you may already be familiar with this tool, which is a database developed in partnership by the American Job Center Network and the Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration. The ONET database is constantly surveying a broad range of workers to provide content used to explain information about all occupations. ONET can be used to understand transferable skills between one job and the next by reviewing key sections with the summary within the summary report for last job and the future positions by entering just the job titles. You can see in the top right corner of the slide here, I've typed in network engineer, information about this type of position. The specific network engineer title that I put in did not register. However, computer network architect was the most closely related suggestion. So I've used this one to proceed in the slides. Key areas to review when previewing the information about each specific job title are as follows. Tasks section lists involved in the position. It can help a customer think more in depth about the role they played in their last position and the role they will need to fill in their next job. Highlighting those transferable skills that they identified above can assist to define their previous role on a resume. This works well for a customer who's held the same role for a long time and struggles to describe what they did in their job. The technology section can help pinpoint hardware and software the customer might have used that can be similar to or a stepping stone into what they would be using in a future position. Once again, this can also help them to better develop their resume towards the future IT position by highlighting the transferable skills on their resume and during the interview. An example of this would be a sales associate using a point of sales machine or system on a daily basis. While using that system, there's a good chance that the customer gained experience such as troubleshooting hardware or software, the ability to learn and utilize hardware software functions to get specific outcomes, and possibly repair connectivity issues to maintain the system. These transferable skills would be beneficial in a customer support or help desk role. However, many people wouldn't think to identify them on the resume. The sustainability sections are also important because they can help pinpoint a customer's soft skills that might be transferable between their previous job and their future position. This is a good way to make sure that they also incorporate these additional skills in their resume or cover letter, as well as prepare for their future interview. Soft skills aren't really thought about a lot when thinking about the resume, just due to the limited space that you have. But if something does directly relate and can be transferable, it could be important to probably list them on the resume. The next I want to talk about is keywords. Excuse me. the right keyword on a website can help that site be selected when conducting a Google search. The right keyword on a resume can help that applicant tracking system that Jeff mentioned earlier, as well as the employer, choose a particular person to interview. Keywords are a major point of marketing, and the customer's best marketing tools are their resume, LinkedIn site, and interview to help them land their next position. It's very important to select the most relevant keywords and highlight them in a resume to ensure they make it through the resume review gauntlet. Keyword is generally a specific name of a tool or skill. Employers will use keywords to identify if a customer would be a good fit for the position when they're using the applicant tracking systems. It can be placed throughout the resume multiple times in the summary, a key skills section, and in the description of the previous job. Some sample IT keywords would be things like Jeff mentioned: Java, LAN, WAN, Microsoft operating systems, Visual Basic, Hadoop, ticket systems, all directly related to the type of position that they worked in a previous role. The resume that we've been using as a sample and highlighted the keywords related to IT that easily stood out to me. As you can see, multiple keywords can be used throughout the resume to exemplify a customer's fit for that specific position. The same keyword can also be used multiple times, just the same as a transferable skill can be used multiple times when detailing past experiences to show a fit for a position. These keywords will change as a customer targets each specific position. So one way to find a keyword is to pull them directly from the job lead. If the job lead is not very telling about the position, or if the customer is applying blindly to a networking contact, viewing a few similar job leads like we discussed above can help select specific keywords to include in the resume. Job lead we saw earlier, you can see I've highlighted IT-related keywords that stood out easily to me. Coming from an IT field, these are just things that I've recognized after meeting, with a number of customers. That would be something that an employer would put on a job lead or looking for based on that job description. For key, you can list abbreviations of tools, but be sure to also list the full version so that the applicant tracking system has more of a chance to capture and count that keyword when calculating eligibility for the resume to be moved on. Words dedicated, experienced, skilled, and etc. are not the type of keywords a customer should spend a lot of time embellishing their resume with. They should focus more on directly matching specific job-related words from the specific job lead to their resume. Be sure that the customer is using proper terminology as it shows on the job lead. An example of this would be if a customer is CCNA certified, but the job lead states it as Cisco certified. They want to be sure to incorporate both ways of stating the same skill on their resume. Be sure to keyword spam, as Jeff mentioned earlier, because although it may assist the resume through the applicant tracking system, the human reader will be very confused by the lack of organization and linear thought process in the resume. The reason this is that the white words that Jeff mentioned earlier will be changed by the applicant tracking system into black font, and that will be included in the version that the HR representative receives of that client's resume. Crowd are great tools to plug in customers' resume, a job lead, or multiple job leads in order to identify the most used keywords. For this Wordle sample, I plugged in the first 5 job leads that we pulled up earlier on Indeed.com, and this resulting word cloud shows the most repeated keywords in the largest font. As the repetition gets smaller, the words get smaller. Example of a tag crowd word cloud, where I plugged in just one single job lead. When we talk about these, we want to be sure that everybody keeps in mind that not all employers use the applicant tracking system method, although many of them do. But when identifying keywords, don't rely solely on Wordle or Tag Crowd to give results. If the job lead relies heavily on CCNA, but they only mention the word once in the requirements, these systems are going to make that important keyword smaller on its list, since it actually doesn't understand the content of the items that we entered into the tool. In knowing this, we do think that it's a great way to get customers engaged in exploring the keywords that they use and see every day. Up the chat box and see if there's any questions. It could be based on today's presentation or any other questions that you have about the JD-NEG grant or issues you've had with your IT customers. If you've attended our presentations before, and as Jeff mentioned earlier, our goal is to help get IT customers employed. So we're constantly researching issues in order to come up with the solutions to help achieve that. We know that your caseloads are very high and that you don't have a lot of time to resolve issues, so we want anything to be brought to our attention. We do have a great connection with DCEO, and we can bring up major issues and ask them to try to come up with some solutions. So we're going to leave the chat box open for just a second here. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to enter anything in. We do have some upcoming webinars. We also have a link on here, which, as Jeff mentioned earlier, is illinoisworknet.com/job-driven-NEG, where you can go to our previous webinars as well as this one today and review them if you need to or would like to, or share it with anybody. We have a participant outreach and marketing tools webinar that we plan to present on March 31st. As of right now, our marketing team is working wonders putting together some marketing materials that we'd like to share with you. We also have an Illinois WorkNet IT-NEG website webinar that we plan to be putting on in the month of April. We want to thank everybody who participated in the Burning Glass presentation a couple days ago, and we will be contacting local workforce areas that are participating with this grant shortly to give information about the training that Burning Glass is going to be presenting to everybody. Also want to be sure that everyone knows Jeff and I can be contacted at any time with any questions. Even if you don't have anything today that you want to ask, if something comes up in the future, please feel free to email us or call us, and we would be happy to give our insight or research anything that we can for you in order to help get your customers enrolled and employed. Do you have anything you want to say, Jeff?
I think you covered it all.
All right. We thank everyone for attending today. This is going to be the end of our webinar. We are going to stay on for a few minutes just to man that chat box, so if anybody has any questions, please let us know. Thanks again for participating.